So there's been a lot of talk and debate recently about what's the best era for a Call of Duty game to be set in, or not even just the era, but specifically the setting, because era is different than setting. No one seems to know how to separate them. Era is just the time period, like is it in the future, is it in the past, is it in the World War II times, but setting goes more specific than that. It goes specific to the locations, the aesthetic, the atmosphere, all of that. To me, the setting is the most important thing. The era itself, it can be very different, still within the same era. I mean, you can have a World War II game that is drastically different from another World War II game depending on the locations it wants to set itself in and the universe it wants to set itself in. But today I'd like to talk about why I believe the futuristic era is the best era in Call of Duty. In my personal opinion, of course, it's going to be different for everyone. As I've said before, the era does not make or break a Call of Duty game. A lot of people saying, oh, this next COD's gonna suck because it's in the World War II era. I think they kind of over-exaggerate, but that does not mean that the setting or era is still not important, because of course it still is important depending on what you prefer from a Call of Duty title. In terms of era and setting, all I really want is diversity, right? I don't really mind what it is. It can really be whatever it wants to be as long as the gameplay is good. I just want different stuff every year, and just because we get the same era does not mean we're gonna get the same setting. I just want a different setting. I want diversity in them, and I think Call of Duty has done mostly a really good job with this. We've only had some times where they kind of overlap and they feel very similar. Modern Warfare 2 to Modern Warfare 3 is a good example. Both those games have very similar settings. Of course, there's a couple different countries they go to, but for the most part, they feel so similar. Black Ops 3 to Black Ops 4 gets said to be very similar in terms of their setting as well, but I honestly think Black Ops 4 has a lot of different locations within their multiplayer because it's in the future, and I'll kind of explain what I mean by that in a little bit. And I do think the Modern Warfare 2019 sequel is going to have the same issue, where it's going to feel very similar in terms of its setting and aesthetic as what Modern Warfare 2019 had. But as a whole, I do prefer the futuristic era, and there's a big reason as to why, and the simple reason is the futuristic era allows for them to do more things and be more creative. Now, they don't always get held back, obviously. We've seen that many times before. In terms of cosmetics, they don't really care. I mean, look at World War II. They have crazy cosmetics in that game. They weren't like the best looking cosmetics ever, but that wasn't because of the era. That was just because I guess Sledgehammer didn't spend as much time on making the cosmetics as maybe Treyarch and Infinity Ward has for some of the recent CODs, because some of the recent cosmetics have been absolutely beautiful. But World War II, they had some cool ones here and there. They definitely weren't really necessarily era appropriate. I mean, a lot of them were really wacky. You're obviously not going to see those in World War II, but I didn't care because I prefer them to be more creative. I prefer them to be a little bit more over the top in the multiplayer. Obviously, campaign is very, very different. Campaign is its own thing. I prefer campaign to be historically accurate if it's trying to be. If it's not trying to be, do whatever the hell you want to do, but still keep it serious. And zombies is obviously, it's allowed to do whatever the hell it's want to do just because it's zombies. You know, you really can do whatever you want and you can make it work. Multiplayer is the only part I want to focus on because there's that gray area between should it be wacky or should it be serious, because it's not really tonally consistent usually based on a lot of the cosmetics that they like to add. But in my personal opinion, I don't think it needs to be tonally consistent because it's a multiplayer. It doesn't need an in-depth story that has a serious tone to it because it's a multiplayer arcade shooter at the end of the day. So when I talk about what holds them back, I'm not talking about cosmetics, because like we established, they can really do whatever the hell they want with cosmetics. We know that. Even maps. World War II had a map where you were playing as a toy soldier in a sandbox. And of course, the developers have the right to go as crazy as they want to if they really do, but I don't feel like they will, because then people complain about it taking a World War II era and making it goofy or whatever. So they don't want to go too crazy with it. And what I mean by that is when it comes to the guns, the killstreaks, most of the maps, obviously not all of them, but most of them, they like to keep them somewhat consistent to that time period and to the setting that they already have established for the game. But the future, they don't need to. They can do whatever the hell they want. They have no feeling of we should probably keep this somewhat realistic. Now, even Cold War hasn't really given a shit about this, and I'm kind of glad they haven't. I don't really want them to, but you see they remade Raid as well as Express, and they kind of kept them looking the same as they were back in Black Ops 2, which took place in 2025. I mean, they kind of changed up Raid a little bit. I guess Raid could work as an 80s map, but Express looks very, 2020s. It does not look like it was from the 80s. but personally, I don't really care. I don't really find that to be jarring or a problem or anything because it's the multiplayer. It's not the campaign. If we saw that in the campaign, I'd be like, okay, this doesn't really fit the Cold War theme, but because it's multiplayer, I usually don't care as much. I prefer having some diverse locations within it. But as I said, the future allows them to get away with these things. It allows them to do crazy things that these other games can't really do and get away with as easily. Look at the weapons. The weapons, we have to have the same general guns that we see pretty much for any other Call of Duty. I mean, look at Cold War's weapons. The only weapons that are really creative and different in that game are weapons that don't even exist in real life. Like, look at the next COD we're gonna get, Modern Warfare 2, the sequel, whatever. It's definitely gonna have the same modern weapons we're used to seeing. We're gonna see an M4, we're gonna see a SCAR, we're gonna see some sort of an MP5, we're gonna see an AK-47, we're gonna see maybe like an M60, we're gonna see some sort of a Barrett 50 cal. We're gonna see the same weapons we've seen a million times over again. The futuristic era, they can really do whatever the hell they want. They can add whatever crazy laser prototype weapons they want to do, and it doesn't feel off. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is not working well because it's not actually real to the time period. Again, I don't care, but I know other people do, and I'm trying to speak for them here. And I mean, look at the kill streaks. That's a great example. I can pretty accurately predict what kill streaks we're gonna get within COD World War II Vanguard. We're gonna have, a recon, we're gonna have an artillery barrage of some sort, we're gonna have a flamethrower, we're gonna have some sort of a ball turret gunner just like COD World War II. Maybe at most the craziest thing we'll get is attack dogs, which we already saw in World at War, but there's nothing too crazy they can do that wouldn't be going beyond what is, realistic to that specific setting and time period. The most creative Call of Duties we've ever gotten are the ones in the futuristic eras. Let's look at all the futuristic CODs we do have. So I guess you can kind of, call some of them futuristic, but not really. I think Ghosts is the one that's kind of like, technically it's futuristic, but it doesn't really feel futuristic to a lot of people because it's an apocalyptic future. Therefore, it doesn't really feel futuristic, but it still kind of is. Then, of course, you have Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, and Advanced Warfare. So those are the 6 games that I would consider futuristic. I don't really, again, Ghosts kind of flip-flops for me. Black Ops 2 even, I mean, it used to be very futuristic, but now that we're getting further in real life and we're almost actually getting to 2025, it doesn't really feel futuristic anymore. Obviously, Modern Warfare 2 and 3 did take place in the future, like past when it was actually releasing the games, but it doesn't feel futuristic because the time period is still very modern. It feels very modern. The setting is very modern. The atmosphere is very modern, so I wouldn't consider that futuristic just yet. But Ghosts, I can kind of see it being futuristic. Same with the other titles I listed, of course. But just think of these games. Which games have had the coolest map locations, the coolest weapons, the craziest cosmetics? All of these 6 Call of Duty games. Like, these are the ones that have had the most interesting stuff, at least in my opinion. I don't really get that excited for new DLC in Modern Warfare or even in Cold War in some ways because a lot of the time it's not that insane. Now, they've done some pretty cool things here and there, and I do like what Cold War is doing. I mean, they're actually adding some 80s action heroes to the game soon, which is pretty cool. But again, I'm not really talking about cosmetics. I'm trying to keep it to the maps, the guns, the streaks, and just the overall feel of the game. It's obviously going to try to stay within that 80s vibe for the most part. I prefer the futuristic era just by looking at my rankings of all the Call of Duty games. My top 5 Call of Duty games, 4 of them are futuristic. Of course, Black Ops 2, 3, 4, and Infinite Warfare are all within my top 5 favorite Call of Duty games of all time. Advanced Warfare and Ghosts, I don't really like that much, so those are definitely, later down on the scale, but that's mainly because of the gameplay side of things. In terms of the atmosphere and the setting, I think Ghosts and Advanced Warfare are really, really cool. Obviously, gameplay is always going to be more important. If, let's say, a World War II game comes out and they design it just like the way I enjoy my Call of Duties, nice and fast-paced, decently slow time to kill, good map design, I'm probably going to enjoy it. I probably will. It doesn't really matter what the setting necessarily is. It's just I know if it's futuristic, they're going to be able to be more creative with what we have within the game, and we've obviously seen that before in all of the other Call of Duties that I've been listing. This even reigns true for, like, television shows and movies and such. The franchises that are over the top crazy and not grounded in reality are able to go on for multiple seasons a lot easier, or multiple, movies, whatever it may be. They're able to go on a lot longer without there being an issue if they're not grounded in reality. Look at Star Wars, Marvel, all the different, superhero stuff. Those can last so long because they're just crazy. There's so much going on in the universe. There's a lot of stuff that isn't within our own reality. But when you have a franchise that's trying to be grounded in reality, it's not going to last that long. It just can't, unless the characters are great. And that's obviously the only time that really works, is when the characters are really interesting and just fun to watch on screen. I mean, obviously you see, comedies and such because they're funny. You watch it because they're funny, not because you care about the universe. The universe you couldn't give less of a shit about. But if you try to make a universe within some sort of a realistic world, it's just not going to be as interesting as something like Star Wars or Marvel, where there's so much crazy stuff happening and there's so many stories you can tell within the universe. Obviously, if you're doing a grounded story, there's really no point of establishing a universe if it's gonna be that way. And it drives me nuts when they try to ground zombies in reality. Don't even get me started on the zombie side of thing, but I'm gonna have to talk about it a little bit. But oh my god, man. I mean, Cold War zombies, I've had a lot of issues with, and I think one of the issues I did have is that it did feel like they were trying to ground it a little bit. Now, not too much. Obviously, there's very supernatural-esque stuff within it. Obviously, it's zombies. It has to be supernatural, but it feels more grounded than any other zombies we've had. I prefer zombies always when it's the craziest it could possibly be. To me, that's what makes zombies fun, is when it's insane. Look at maps like Origins, you got giant walking robots. Black Ops 3, you got, maps like Gorod Krovi with giant dragons. You have Revelations with giant alien apothecan creatures. Shadows of Evil with the Margwas. You have Black Ops 4 with the Chaos maps. You go to ancient Greece. Well, not really ancient Greece. It was Delphi, but it's in Greece, right? I don't remember. Whatever. You go to ancient places. You go to the Titanic, which obviously is a historically real thing, but it's not, exactly how it was before. It's got like these mythical vibes to it. You go to this, Roman Colosseum with these crazy creatures that we've never seen before. You got werewolves and stuff. They go above and beyond what's realistic because it's zombies. It's not trying to be realistic. And I don't think multiplayer should be either. And the futuristic era just kind of gives them that ability to do that without much conflict, without people complaining about it kind of, rewriting history in a way. Now, if they come out and they say straight up, we're not trying to be historically accurate, we're trying to have some fun with this game, but it's going to be set in World War II, then I think people might not care as much. But every year they always try to hit hard with this historical accuracy. Like they always talk about it like, oh, we're trying to be historically accurate. We want this to be a gritty, realistic feeling universe. You shouldn't say that if it's not going to be that. You know what I mean? I know they're usually talking about the campaign, but even for Black Ops Cold War, I'm pretty sure David Vonderhaar said before the multiplayer reveal that this was supposed to be like a gritty, realistic take on the Cold War or something. And again, he might have been talking about the campaign, but obviously, the multiplayer is not going to be that, and I'm glad the multiplayer wasn't that, because I think it'd be very boring if it was trying to be insanely realistic in any way, shape, or form. I want to see some crazy stuff, and I think they got to do more with that. That is one of the biggest things I want from COD, but it's unfortunate that it's probably not going to happen too much, because it seems that the casual community, which makes up the majority of the players, definitely prefer a more realistic take on Call of Duty, because those are the titles that sell better. I mean, the futuristic titles don't sell that well. The ones that sell the best are the Modern Warfare and Black Ops games, and those are the ones that usually are, in the past, obviously. Black Ops 3 and 4 didn't actually sell that well, so clearly futuristic stuff just wasn't doing Call of Duty justice. It wasn't, and that's why I don't expect to see it again for a while, unless it's like very toned down futuristic, like Black Ops 2 or like Ghosts, for example. So hopefully you all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in that comment section below, and I will see you guys on my next one. Peace out.